Hi there, and welcome to today's class. We are actually going to talk today a little bit about logic models. So, if you can see on your screen, this is a logic model tip sheet. I'll make that available as an optional activity up in your Blackboard folder. So, one of the things that you should do first would be to actually read your chapter in your textbook that has to do with logic models, and that would be chapter 12. That's your implementation chapter. So if you read that first, the first section of that chapter talks a little bit about logic models. So what are they? Really, a logic model is a graphic illustration of the relationship between what your program's resources are, what activities are you going to do, and what effects are you going to have. So sort of, what are your objectives? What are your sort of short-term knowledge, attitudes, belief objectives? What are your behavioral objectives? And what are your long-term outcome objectives? So what you're going to do today to learn a little bit more about logic models is to do the background reading of the first part, the first section of your chapter. And then what I'm going to have you do, I think it's important to kind of see some examples of logic models. So one of the examples that I'm going to have you look at is right here on your screen. So if you look at this, and you may need to blow this up a little bit to look at this, and I will put this up as well on Blackboard so you can take a look at this. So this is an example of a logic model. So remember we said it's a graphic, so you can see it's basically like a chart almost, a diagram. And this one in particular is about technology and safety, so tech safety for younger kids, like high school and younger kids, about how do they keep themselves safe online. And so if you see, and this is very standard, this bar across the top, inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So you've got under inputs, what are you putting into the program? So what has to kind of go into the implementation of this program? Well, to teach these kids about technology safety, you need to have staff time, research base, literature. So you need to look at what are the stats out there, what does the literature say about programs, best practice programs. You need to look at technologies that you have. So are you going to need to have access maybe to computers, say for example, and internet connections, and what sort of equipment do you need to have? So what do you need to know how to use? What do you need your learners to know how to use? Then if you look at the outputs, those are broken up by activities and participation. So activities, you can see here, this is what you're actually going to do. So this is part of your implementation. What is the implementation plan? And you can see that there are trainings that will be conducted. There's an internet safety education at child development days. That's working with younger kids. There's a safety education component at a day camp and reality check event. There are media releases that will be created. That's here. There will be facilitation of a tech safety fair that kids and their families are invited to, and then updating programs and resources based on current research. So if you're doing more of these trainings, just making sure that it stays current, since we know technology can change. Like what kids are doing in terms of technology can move from app to app. In terms of participation, who's doing this? 4-H members, that's going to be at that fair that they're invited for the 4-H members to participate in this. County youth, so this is in Buffalo County in New York. This is what this example is from. I'm sorry, in Wisconsin. There will be adults who are participating, and that could be the parents who will be with the kids when they're learning about tech safety. Educators, community leaders, the agency staff, law enforcement officials will be involved as well, librarians, and then the media. So if you move over here, so this is kind of what is being put together. Over here this is going to look pretty familiar. If you look under outcomes, you'll see short, medium, and long outcomes. So think about short outcomes will be things like knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs. So youth and adults, you're increasing their ability to communicate about internet safety and practices. Parents will be able to increase their skills about talking to young people about technologies. So you can see these are really similar to your objectives. So these are things that that you've probably already written for your own programs that you would just need to fit into these. So you've got knowledge, attitudes, beliefs go in that first short column. So outcome, impact, short, so short term. Then in the middle those are medium outcomes. and they use slightly different terminology than we sometimes use in precede proceed. But these are behaviors. So what behaviors are you wanting them to do? So you want them in the short run to be communicating effectively. You want them to practice proficient application of Web 2.0 technologies. You want the kids who are learning to apply those rules or those principles of citizenship in physical and cyber world, so like things like no bullying. Then you want to make sure that media increases their coverage of internet safety. So those are your medium impact. All of those are kind of working into these outcome objectives, or here what we have where it says longer term outcomes. So that, because what do we want? Well, we want youth to be safe and responsible internet and technology users. And you want to be able to bridge that generation gap with technology. So, between, for example, parents or other adults and kids. So that's what a logic model looks like, and that's one example of one that I've walked you through. The other thing that you're going to do in your folder is you are actually going to go through a CDC tutorial on logic models, and that's found. I've created a separate link for that, so this is sort of just the intro to this. And what you'll see when you first start looks a lot like this, where it says logic models and program planning, and it's a brief overview, and you're going to work your way through this. Anytime that you have a question about a word, if you're like, well, I don't quite understand, what do they mean by strategic plan, for example, just float your cursor over it and it is going to define it for you. So you're going to work your way through this app, and there are some sort of checkpoints to check understanding throughout this tutorial. So that should help you figure out if you're grasping the concepts or not. So work your way through that. It should take about 40 minutes. And hopefully you'll have much better understanding of logic models. That's an important piece for being a health education planner, is to understand how to use logic models. Okay, good luck.